Namandats, 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 namandats. 나곤초세간 이심저다 시간프만적 세이프조셔각 나오무려걸 의다이세슈 의사이쇼빙그 세부조쇼각 가시저분더 묘쇼초지법 극결미셔먼 세부조쇼각 니옥진쇼넨 조회수번겨 시금저도 이쇼텐닌시 진리기엔다이고 의쇼무사이도 쇼조산금요 고사이슈야크남 다이히치에겐 메시콘모한 에이소크쇼아크도 쯔답zen시몬 고소조만석 이오로지포 니치간슈즈키 텐코온후겜 이슈카이호조 고세크도크호 조다이슈추 세포시시크 그요이사이브츠 그소크슈토크혼 간에신조맘 도크이산가요 뇨붓무게치 쯔닷미프쇼 간가크에릭 도시사이쇼손 시간야코카 다이센노칸도 고쿠쇼텐님 도우치묘케 나만다부 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 간니시크도크 뼈도세 sai to yu hot bo dai shin o yu jo yu Namo Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Buddha, Namandaps, 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 Namandaps. Please join me in Gassho. When they hear the profound Dharma, they rejoice and entrust themselves to it without giving rise to any doubt. And thinking of the Buddha even once, with sincere mind, they aspire to be born in that land. When people are about to die, they, seeing the Buddha as in a dream, also attain birth. In virtue and wisdom, they are next to those of the middle level. Namo Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Buddha. Namandats, 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 namandats. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Sunday service, still in the month of January of 2022. While we are doing our best to shelter ourselves from the chilly weather and this most recent outbreak of another coronavirus variant, the Omicron variant, I have contemplated and thought about the matters of life and death in this world. So for those of you who watched the January Shotsuki service, I mentioned that December's and January's Shotsuki service list, the names on the list, were quite lengthy. And it seems that it's around this time that people tend to pass away. And once again, not that it's by their choice or that they've decided that this is a time to pass away, but it just seems that that's what tends to happen during the cold winter months. Today's Gosandai comes from the larger sutra. One of the reasons why I love this sutra, or why I am so moved by this sutra, including the other two Pure Land Sutras, is that it is a compassionate sutra that settles the fear of our passing from this world. One of the biggest things, or one of the biggest clingings we have as human beings, according to Buddhism, is our form, is our present life. We are afraid of death, essentially. We are afraid of passing into the unknown. And when others pass before us, it causes us much grief and it causes us much anxiety. Of course, one of the reasons why we grieve is because we are very sad and we are unable to accept at first the loss of the loved one who we relied on so much, or who we, in a sense, took for granted, that they are going to be there tomorrow, that they will always be there. But inevitably, according to Buddhism, and just life in general, we all must pass at some point. All of us must. And this goes back to the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, when Shakyamuni Buddha was still Prince Siddhartha. You all remember the story of Prince Siddhartha leaving his palace 4 times, or going out of 4 gates, and seeing the inevitabilities of life, birth, old age, sickness. Well, sorry. First he sees an old man, then he sees sick people, and then the third gate he saw a person who had passed away. He saw death. And death is one of the biggest concepts that we deal with in Buddhism, I sometimes think. One of the main reasons why Shakyamuni Buddha turned to a religious life, rejecting a life of luxury, was to find out, how do we escape death? How do we escape the cycle of birth and death? We all are constantly living and dying. And we are in that time of living and dying. We're all suffering. We all have this anxiety. We all have this unease. How do I cure that? How do I get rid of that? This is what led Shakyamuni Buddha, or Siddhartha at the time, on the spiritual path that eventually led to him becoming the Buddha. And it is said that the same is true with our founder, Shinran Shonin, that he also experienced, legend has it, he also experienced death early on in his life. It was said that his mother passed away while he was still a child, which led to him being ordained in the Tendai order at the ripe age of 9 years old. Sorry, not ripe, at the early age of 9 years old. And I myself have had to do a couple of pillow services. In Jodo Shinshu, we call them Rinju Gongyo. But I've had to do a couple of these services as well. And it causes me to think about these matters of life and death. Most recently, we are seeing many celebrities pass away as well. We saw a couple weeks ago, Bob Saget passed away, and then the famous rock singer Meatloaf. But the one who passed away most recently, that is now leading to a great following of Facebook and social media posts, is the venerable master Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away on our January 21st, but probably in Europe's January 22nd. For those of you who do not know the venerable master Thich Nhat Hanh, he was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. But he wasn't just a monk. He was also a peace activist, an environmentalist, a humanitarian, and he was even the one who coined the phrase, engaged Buddhism. It is possible that his popularity rivaled that of the Dalai Lama, and the amount of books he has written are too much to count. Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh was able to speak in a language that made Buddhism relatable to the society we live in today. He has also been a major source of Buddhist quotes for inspirational posters and scrolls, and most recently, through social media. If a person has ever quoted what they consider to be a Buddhist quote, either on Twitter or Facebook or even at a party, it is likely that at one point they quoted Master Thich Nhat Hanh. While Master Thich Nhat Hanh was not of the Jodo Shinshu school, I feel it is necessary for us to still acknowledge his passing as an incredible influential teacher of Buddhism in the West. I myself did not have the pleasure or privilege of meeting him or hearing in person or hearing any of his lectures in person. But I have read many of his writings. After finding out of his passing, I began looking through some of his books again to find a suitable passage for today's Dharma talk. A book that I have particularly enjoyed reading is entitled No Death, No Fear. He also spoke extensively on this subject of the fear of death, life and death. As Buddhists, all schools, one of the main concern of joining our traditions is the fear and the anxiety that comes with the cycle of birth and death. The quote reads as follows. I will read a passage from this book. Our greatest fear is that when we die, we will become nothing. Many of us believe that our entire existence is only a lifespan, beginning the moment we are born or conceived and ending the moment we die. We believe that we are born from nothing and that when we die, we become nothing. And so we are filled with the fear of annihilation. The Buddha has a very different understanding of our existence. It is the understanding that birth and death are notions. They are not real. The fact that we think they are now makes a powerful illusion that causes our suffering. The Buddha taught that there is no birth, there is no death. There is no coming, there is no going. There is no same, there is no different. There is no permanent self, there is no annihilation. We only think there is. When we understand that we cannot be destroyed, we are liberated from fear. It is a great relief. We can enjoy life and appreciate it in a new way. What a magnificent quote by Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh. While I am completely aware that this is not a Jodo Shinshu quote, I find there are many similarities or parallels in the language of our school. When he talks about the great relief at the end of this quote, it sounds very similar to our school's teaching of being truly settled. Once we have fully accepted the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha, once we fully accepted the Nembutsu teaching, there is to be this great sense of relief or this great sense of joy, this great sense of settlement, that we no longer have to worry or fear the unknown or fear the cycle of birth and death, because Amida Buddha has created the Pure Land simply for our benefit, for us to be born to after we die, for us to be reunited with the realm of the Dharma. In our school of Jodo Shinshu, there is also an encouragement to live this life with a sincere heart and an attitude of gratitude. I just made a rhyme there. This is because we are always embraced by the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. Once we have fully accepted this notion or this understanding or this teaching or just the wisdom and compassion altogether, once we put our hands together in Nembutsu and fully entrust ourselves in the Nembutsu teaching, there no longer has to be the sphere of what happens after I die. I can now live my life to the fullest. I can now live my life with a sense of gratitude. In our teachings as well, it doesn't mean that we totally expel our blind passions or we totally expel the anxieties that we face. There are things that we get worried about. There are things that naturally come up. Sometimes we do get angry, and sometimes we do have bouts of anger or bouts of worry or bouts of of fear. There are these times that we naturally have these responses to something sudden that happens. If the sutras and Shinran Shonin have taught us anything, it is that ultimately we do not need to fear death or live a life where we are constantly worried about it. I believe as humans, we all have a fear of the unknown. And I also do not believe when people tell me very boldly and wholeheartedly to a certain extent that I have no fear of death. I think everybody, including myself, has some fear of dying because scientifically speaking or proving otherwise, we don't really know what comes after death. None of us do. We all have this fear of the unknown, and we have a fear of that crossing as well. What happens after we die? Is there a heaven? Were the teachings I subscribe to the truth? Was I part of the right religion? Will it hurt when I die? No one has the answers to these questions for sure, but we did have wonderful teachers to ease our anxieties about them. For me, I choose to take refuge in the embrace of the Nembutsu. For Amida Buddha assures us that we are forever accepted and forever welcome to the Pure Land. Our teachings of Pure Land Buddhism are not there for us to fret or for us to eagerly await the moment of death. Similar to the teachings of the venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, our notions of birth and death are limited to that of our egocentric minds. He encouraged us to alter our views on the matter so that we could live a more happy and present life. In this sense, our teachings couldn't be more similar, in that once we take refuge in the Nembutsu teaching, we no longer have to live a life filled with anxiety and fear of the great inevitability that will come for all of us eventually. As sad as we are about the passing of the venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, I believe that his legacy will continue to live on and that his writings and books will be read even more now that he has passed. It is true, once a person passes, like a great teacher like Thich Nhat Hanh, we will no longer be able to go to a live lecture of his. We will no longer be able to hear his voice in person. Yet this is also the truth of the Buddha. The Buddha passed away over 2,000 years ago. And because of this, we no longer can attend a lecture given to us by Shakyamuni Buddha. Therefore, we must rely on the teachings that were handed down through his loyal disciples and through the scriptures of the sutras. And the same thing can be said with the Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh. And similarly, this month we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, not only just to celebrate a birthday, but to also acknowledge the wonderful effect that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had on our nation. And it isn't just there to give us a holiday where we don't have to go to work or we don't have to go to school. There is also a responsibility on our part to delve into some of his teachings, to delve into some of the writings. Why are we honoring this person in the first place? And the same goes with Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh. After a person of great influence passes like him, I think it is incumbent upon us as people of the world, as community members, to look at some of his teachings and find out why he was so venerated and so influential in the first place. And not only just read his teachings, read his writings, it's also to really thoroughly, deeply contemplate them. And the same is true with the teachings of the Buddha. Again, this is why we as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists chant either Shoshin Nembutsu-ge, written by Venerable Master Shinran, or we chant passages of Jusei-ge or Sambutsu-ge in the first place. This isn't just to make ourselves feel meditative. This isn't just to give us something to do or make us feel more Buddhist, but there are deep and heavy teachings in the scriptures that were written, that were handed down from the Buddha's mouth to his disciples to eventually being written down on scrolls or a paper. And there are these deep teachings for us to deeply contemplate, to deeply listen to. When a person passes away, like Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh, it also gives us an opportunity to deeply contemplate their teachings. But it also awakens us to the truth of the Dharma, to the truth of this life as well, that nothing lasts forever, that we are here for only a limited amount of time. And when a venerable master passes away, it makes us realize that we need to cherish the teachings that are given to us now, the teachings that were handed down to us and preserved by the other masters as well. As we contemplate and mourn the passing of a great teacher, let us also be inspired to delve into the teachings that he prescribed for his followers, as well as our Jodo Shinshu teachings, to once again do our best to live our lives with a deep sense of gratitude and ease as we are all embraced by Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. So thank you very much for joining me for today's Sunday Dharma talk. I would like to thank you all for continuing to watch and subscribe to the Tacoma Buddhist Temple's channel. I really hope that all of us do a good job, I think, of sometimes really stepping back and thinking. And I would like to thank Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh for living his life with his teachings, for practicing what he preached. I would like to thank Master Thich Nhat Hanh for writing all of those books and for writing all of those quotes. I have a thing about Buddhist quotes, but I won't get into that now. But I thank him for so many memorable quotes and sayings. So I look forward to future discussions with all of you about Master Thich Nhat Hanh sometime in the future, or our Masters of the Pure Land. And with that, please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namandaps, 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 namandaps.